But not only does Gregg Braden speak of these 7 sacred mirrors that allow us to see a part of ourselves when in relationship with another person, he also talks about, and I'll include the link in the description. It's a video I haven't watched for 20 years, but I've referenced it 100 times in the last 2 years, so I'm gonna have to watch it again, because there's gotta be some good stuff in there. These temples, these stone complexes that people would go around the world to in order to master some aspect of their inner being. Lust, rage, anger, envy, power, the warrior within. That's one that he kind of focused on, and it was the Temple of Sekhmet. And this whole COVID thing has extracted the warrior within from each of us. And he talks about that warrior within. We all have it. Do you know when it's appropriate to use and how to use it? And in this scenario, everyone's inner warrior within is being summoned, called upon. And with the dial from 0 to 100, 99.9% of the time, not 0 and not 100 is the right place to use your warrior within. Something above 0 and something less than 100, but people that have never used their warrior within and decide to now end up going to jail because they got in a fight with someone in a Walmart because they were drawing a line. They're taking a stand right here, and they went from 0 to 100. Mike Morales is a different case. He says he lost a job that he had for 20 years over this whole cornholio thing, and that's probably an appropriate application of the warrior within to sacrifice my lifestyle in order that I'm not going to be a part of this thing that you're creating. So that's kind of a different thing. That's not jumping the gun. So we don't want to fire all of our guns at once and explode into space. Learning to moderate that warrior within and embrace it and harness it in order to be able to use it. And that has to do with your emotional state of being. I got 2 thoughts going. I was double tracking on my mind. So, I'm going to talk about projecting love when you go into one of these stores without a mask. A very practical application of what I'm talking about here and now. And I think that's why I don't get messed with. Because when people see that you're happy, you're on top of the world, you're not just faking a smirk to be polite and professional, that kind of happy. But they can see that you're really happy, they know they can't contend with that. What they try to do is hostility baiting to get you to react. Say, fuck you, I'm not wearing a mask. They try to get you to react with hostility. And if they see that they can't do that, because you're a bit too happy for them to be able to get under your skin, they don't even try. But there's a vibratory frequency broadcasting, and we all have a sensor that picks it up. And you have to actually be feeling those feelings in your heart. Wearing a fake plastic smile ain't gonna do it, I don't think. I don't know, I haven't tried. So Gregg talks about how Jesus and other initiates of the highest order went around the world to these stone sarcophagus, these temples. Those are 2 separate things. The stone sarcophagus simulates high frequency and low magnetics. You see MB3 showing you the Schumann cavity resonance every day because we're at high frequency and we're definitely at 0 point. So that was called awakening to 0 point. The second part is called the collective initiation, where we are all being initiated into the same highest order that these high-level initiates went around the world in order to experience high frequency and low magnetics in order that they would be able to experience what we're going through today. So we don't need to go to those stone sarcophagus anymore. We're in the environment that they simulated in those chambers. And they went around to these other temples to explore some aspect of your inner being. And we don't need those temples today. Our relationships with each other are those temples. Whether it's your relationship, your 30-second relationship with the person behind the counter checking you out, or something more substantial and long-term, with every person you interact with, you're having a relationship. The maskers and the anti-maskers are a good demonstration or a good example of our relationships with one another. This temple that we're in this relationship, that extracts that part of your inner being that's asking for a greater healing or a greater development and some attention paid to it, and puts it right in front of your face. The warrior within is one of them. That's just one of the many parts of our inner being that are being stimulated in this experience. There's a song the other day, I think it went viral, I've seen it a couple times. Some dude started a song, "Oh, I hate anti-maskers, I really fucking do," and then some girl starts taking over. She took over his song and said, "We really don't like you either, you Fauci-loving shrew, something, something, something. If butt plug was a COVID cure, you'd be the first in line." So, not individual relationships, but collective relationships of these two, maskers and anti-maskers. For some reason, Democrats and Republicans, and this is all fallen very close to party lines, but this is our relationships with one another that are allowing us to develop and harness those aspects of our inner being. And it's all those other emotions that you must master in order to harness the warrior within. Because it's those other emotions that will send you into a fit of rage and you apply the warrior within inappropriately. Or it's those other feelings that will cause you to feel insignificant, powerless, and not worthy. So you leave your warrior within at zero, you roll over, you take the butt plug, and whatever comes next. Only once you've mastered some of those aspects of your warrior within can you even engage the warrior within. And only after you've mastered some of those aspects of the rest of your psyche and your emotional profile can you even engage that warrior within appropriately. Feelings of self-doubt, shame, guilt. We've all been recognizing this is about shame. This whole COVID mask thing, something at the very heart of it that is about shame. And people that feel shameful for the lives they've lived don't seem to be able to stand up for the truth that they now see and believe in, because they haven't exercised it throughout their life. They can't start using it now. Just like the warrior within. So, these training exercises that we've had throughout our entire lives are much like military boot camp, where they give you training to fall back on in a high-stress, tense situation where you can't even think straight. That's when you fall back on your training. And you act like out of muscle memory, reflex. Training, we all know what that's about. Mental emotional training is what we've been through our whole lives. Each time you made a decision to do something this way or that way, that downloaded that part of your training into your psyche, into your schemas. And right now, this thing that we've never seen before, that's taken us all by storm, is leaving you to rely on your training. Because we can't figure this out and see what's going on and think our way through it. You have to feel your way through it. And people that did not pay attention to their feelings and discarded them as archaic, like your tonsils, like an organ that we don't use anymore. Like it used to be something the primitive people had a use for, but now that we're so high-minded, my dad took pride in the idea that anytime there's a conflict between your heart and your mind, always go with the head. The heartache will go away. And if you just always go with the head, you'll be better off afterwards. So, in this thing, you can't go with your head because you have no idea what the hell is going on. much less what's going to happen tomorrow. Like Matt said, they're changing up the program on the fly. Real-time adjustments to their plan. So in this scenario, you're left to your inner being, your emotional response to the stimulus is what really determines how you're going to behave. And if you have shame, it's pretty clear that the people with shame behave in a certain way. They put the mask on, they take it, they hang their head low, and they don't feel good about themselves enough. They don't have high enough level of self-esteem to stand up for themselves. And those who have not been chasing the truth and resistant to lies, and maybe even engaged in some of their own lies, have, again, a weak spot when it comes to this thing that we're having foisted upon us. So people that haven't been in alignment with truth have a real problem with seeing and saying the truth and acting accordingly in this situation. People that have high levels of shame because they have not conducted themselves in an honorable, dignified, noble manner, do not trust themselves to know right and wrong and be able to draw the line and say this is right, that is wrong, and we ain't having no more of it. Very similarly, in fact, maybe even more so, people that didn't think for themselves outside the box, like truthers and conspiracy theorists, people that didn't think for themselves outside the box of conventional wisdom and consensus reality for their whole lives and just kind of went along with whatever the group think is, find it impossible to think for yourself now and think outside the box of the lies that are coming through the TV. But a lot of people are catching on and developing those characteristics real quick. I'm going to skip to a couple other subjects here, but on the same note, they were testing the sewers for COVID. Y'all remember that? Ridiculous. But if we're willing to allow that absurdity, people who are capable of believing absurdities are capable of committing atrocities. Hold that thought for later. The absurdity of testing the sewer for coronavirus, the most common virus there is and ever has been, which means you'll get a positive test every time. And if you get a negative test, there's something wrong with your test. Because this is the common coronavirus that's labeled right there on the Lysol bottle. But we're willing to say, oh, okay, and not call them on that kind of bullshit. What about when they move those testing kits, not on the sewer main, but in the service line running from the sewer main up to each house, and put one of those sensors there. Wire it with alarms that dispatch hazmat and law enforcement. At what point are you willing to draw the line and trust on your own senses and believe in your own abilities to decipher right from wrong and live your life and even die your death based on those personally relevant, personally meaningful sets of morals and ethics, codes of conduct? People that haven't come up with personally relevant, personally meaningful code of conduct throughout their life are incapable of doing it now. And when they say we're putting the COVID testing on every service line, that way we'll know which household is positive for COVID. And when we get a positive sensor, we're coming in force with the vaccines, in the hazmat suits, and the guys in the army gear. A lot of people would have no problem with that because they have no alternative. They have no recourse. They're incapable of thinking for themselves because they've never done it before. They're incapable of acting on their own belief because they've never done it before. So in this extraction process, we are all left to fall back on our training. Training, that routine, repetitive, activity that develops your muscle memory or your emotional and mental muscle memory was done throughout our lives. And at this point, they're just extracting what's there. Making some changes and decisions is probably not going to change much. You are who you are. And this process, like I said on my way to Missouri, we're all getting a chance to show our true colors. And this process has done just that. Extracted the core being of the person and put their report card right on their face. Mask. This guy said today it was good. I'll tell you that later though. Speaking of something else I said on my way to Missouri and a bunch of other times, they will see it in the others, but not in themselves. And in this way, they will fall in the traps and the pits that they dug for us. Through all that hatred, animosity, contempt, fear, and rage that they have ingrained and indoctrinated these people with, as soon as they see that slit pupil on someone, their mind disengages, and those feelings that they never even thought about, like God-fearing. It says in the Bible, like a few hundred times, do not fear. Fear is not of God. Yet you still got these Christians saying, oh, I'm a good God-fearing Christian. I could go over the other double thing, but the parable of the beam and the mote, I have not heard a person contradict or challenge my interpretation of it. The beam is the vertical slit pupil, the mote is the round human pupil, and I'm leading up to Joe Biden's video where you can see he's got the beams. And I've told you I will be judging them by the fruits. God said, you will know them by their fruits, not their pupil shape, and quite the contrary, he said, remove the beam from your own eye. And only then will you be able to see clearly to remove the mote from your brother's. That is imploring you not to engage in genocide based on pupil shape. And as the veil drops, and we are able to see things we never saw before, I told you guys a few months ago that while I was watching MSNBC with my parents, or Fox or whatever news channel it was, I noticed on 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and it just kept happening. People with solid black eyes. Like it's all pupil. And it wasn't just me who could see it. I pointed out to my mom and stepdad, I'm like, you see those eyes? You see what I'm saying? They're like, yeah, that's pretty freaky. And I saw this 5 or 6 times. I mentioned it to my mom and stepdad in the room because that's the only time I ever watch TV. It's when I'm visiting with them. And I saw it 5 or 6 times during that small segment of time, like one day a week, that I visit with them. And I mentioned it in the videos. So we may actually be coming upon a time where the veil drops. And like I said, it's like on the movie They Live, where they smash the transmitter and everyone can see who's who. And they will see it in others, but not in themselves. Cut here to Billy Corrigan. One of the comments that I read somewhere said that, it wasn't even in one of my videos, I don't think, that in an interview with Billy Corrigan, he said he saw his own eyes shift to that slit pupil, the beam, from the mote to the beam. I mentioned this, and someone else replied that they had heard Billy Corrigan say he saw this happen live, in real life, in person, but they don't remember hearing him say that it was about himself. They just remember hearing him, they're like, I'm gonna have to check up on that. I gotta go find that interview. Because I remember hearing Billy Corrigan say, leader of Smashing Pumpkins. Now, with that context of knowing he said he saw his own eyes change. That song makes a little more sense. Even though I know, I suppose I'll show all my cool and cold like old Job. Despite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. Even though I know. That song takes on a whole nother meaning. So my point in leading up to this and all this meme and moat talk is that I'm going to include the link in the description, 2 of them, that are just short clips from a recent Joe Biden speech that the lady took a video of her television with her camera. And you can see these slit pupils the whole time. It's not like a frame here or a frame there. That's why I want to find the original speech and see if it looks like that throughout the whole speech. Because back when I saw these black eyes showing up on MSNBC, you know, like the black-eyed kids kind of thing, but they were adults. I remember saying there's a possibility they are throwing in contacts in order to discredit the truthers and anyone who would speak of these anomalies in people's eyes. So they throw in some black contacts, bait the truthers into talking about it and pointing it out, take the contacts out and say these fucking people are crazy. I remember asking you if you would be willing to wear a pair of contacts to protect the innocent. And now there's a question as to whether or not they're actually baiting the truthers in this Joe Biden video. In fact, it's so glaringly apparent, someone in the comment section of this video that I'm going to link in the description says, I wonder if they're doing that thing where there's like a rule that they have to tell us what they're doing before they do it kind of thing. And they're coming right out in the open and showing you that this guy ain't human. So I would raise the question, A, is he wearing contacts? And I mentioned that, and someone else said they thought maybe he was wearing like virtual lens contacts so he could read a teleprompter without having a teleprompter in front of him. The other possibility is the lighting that he's looking into has a big black strip in the middle and a light bar over here and a light bar over here, and in his eye the reflection makes it appear as a black strip in the middle. It's not many options here. Either they're intentionally baiting us, he was wearing contacts so he could read a teleprompter and they just made his eyes look that weird, or he's a reptilian. So I don't know where I left off, but one of my many random points is that in this experience, paying attention to your emotional state, when your blood pressure goes up, when you're happy, when you're sad, noticing what just changed your emotional state is key. Because it's your own ability to regulate and govern that inner emotional state that will determine what you end up doing, because emotion drives your behavior and your thoughts far more than thoughts. And in fact, knowing is just thinking and believing with a feeling of certainty. Once you believe, once you think about something and believe it so much that you say, I know this to be true, you just have a feeling of certainty about it. But this feeling state, that I'm telling you, seems more essential right now than just about anything else. People that might be able to provide you with tools to regulate your emotional state are probably, good people to be listening to right now. I don't have many of those tools for you. If you have a connection with spirit, that would be a good way to keep your focus on that connection and relationship. And it is through your heart, through your feeling system, that you develop a relationship with the spirit. And it's through this burning out of all of our fear, through this emotional stimulus, that they're getting us ready to meet God. So as far as judging them by their fruits, old Sniffy Joe, I've seen enough of his behavior. It doesn't take someone who's, pretty good at psychoanalysis to see that he creeps out the little girls that he's standing next to that recoil from him and say, "What did you say, old man? Get your hands off me, quit sniffing my hair, and what the hell's wrong with you?" That other guys come in and put their arm around their wife and get in between Joe and their wife. There's plenty of this video out there. So no matter what shape Joe's pupils are, I've seen enough of his behavior. I have a pretty good assessment of that guy already. But let's not let this become, and that might be what it is, I don't know, something like the Catholic Church moment, when the truth came out and then nothing happened and business as usual went on thereafter. You know what happened? No one has the ability to use pedophilia as blackmail against any of the Catholic Church anymore. They bought immunity with whatever payoffs they did because we consented, we accepted it. And now, you can't threaten, "I'm going to expose you and this other priest and that other priest." Guess what? Everyone already knows. It is now impossible to use their pedophilia as leverage against them. They've been given a free pass. It's now socially acceptable because it was socially accepted. I think our Catholic Church moment is coming because, when we were force feeding the prisoners in Guantanamo Bay, oh yeah, remember all those photos that came out of Abu Ghraib? That's still on the plate. That still exists. And during the Obama administration, he said there's more videos and photos that have come out of Abu Ghraib that I'm not going to release because it would inflame the tensions between these two groups.